There is a certain beauty to watching your vegetable seeds grow to create flowers. But beyond the beauty is the realization that this is where the real work starts. Work like providing nutrition, fighting the heat, or the pests you know will come. So let's begin the garden tour update. Remember the spaghetti squash? I think they've finally forgiven me for the root disturbance and have slowly begun to vine and create flowers. The summer squash, unlike the spaghetti squash, have continued to happily move forward and appear to be thriving. I had to make another trellis over here, ironically, for the thinning outtakes of the spaghetti squash that have really taken off. There's a baby squash, and another over there. And for those of you who don't think these put out grasping tentacles, take a look here. It definitely has grabbed hold of the string. So all in all, the squash is looking pretty good. And on to the long beds. I recently learned that I've been unknowingly using a German technique called hugelkultur, where logs and plant leaves boost nutrients in the soil, which explains the corn differences in the last video. Realizing the lack of nutrients, I decided to take some remedial action to raise soil quality. I went back and put in small rotted tree branches and rotted banana peel scraps, high in potassium that promotes growth and fights disease. Both are easy to break down, and I planted them all over the long beds to provide nutrients. I then followed up with fish emulsion. This combination seems to be working because the smaller corn plants do appear sturdier. And even the bell peppers have had a growth spurt. I've already been harvesting and eating beans and collards, and the collard leaves are larger. I'm even getting more and larger strawberries. Oh yes, remember the little sunflower plants? Well, they aren't so little anymore. There's one here and another over there. I can also see the difference from my soil enrichment because my kale was a little yellow and now is a nice green. I picked some this morning for dinner. And on to the tomato plants that have also shown a desire to grow to another level. I've put them in cages and I'm already seeing blooms, so it won't be long before there are tomatoes. The corn, of course, has always been the star and just keeps going. Over here is a cucumber thinning outtake, where I made a small trellis. I wasn't sure if the braces were too large, but evidently not. And then the main cucumber bed, which is quickly climbing the wire cage and producing flowers. More summer squash. And more tomatoes, along with corn and basil. I've put in beans along with the basil because I watched a Native American documentary describing the Three Sisters companion approach of planting corn, squash, and beans together. The beans climb the corn while providing nitrogen, and the squash shades the ground. I guess I'm not so crazy after all. Over here is shading I've set up for the peas. Thatch for the top for diffused sun, and some leftover weed barrier for the early morning sun. Which brings me to my biggest disappointment. I planted sweet peas, but then learned that they are an early spring or fall crop and can't stand temperatures higher than 75 degrees. And it has been well above that here. So I've done succession planting of more tolerant climbing beans right next to the sweet peas. I hated to let them go because they really are sweet. But I've cut off the stalks, left the roots, and will begin to train the climbing beans in their place. I'll come back to the sweet peas in the fall. However, as a result, everywhere I planted peas as a companion, I've had to go back and plant either bush or climbing beans so the surrounding plants can still get their nitrogen fix. So far, I'm pleased with the garden's progress, and I've created playlists so you can watch videos of my process from the very beginning. The next couple of weeks should be interesting as I progress with what I call continual planting and figure out my next steps. See you next time.